Hello, welcome to Magic Circles in the Skies podcast and today's episode. But before we begin, I'd like to give thanks to all the people that have liked, shared, and subscribed. This is very much appreciated. And now for today's episode. The Lamp at the End of the Street by Magic Circles in the Sky, which I've renamed as the Eternal Light. The structure will remain the same, starting off with a summary where I'll digress on a few highlighted sentences and give my reflection and a pearl of wisdom. Then we'll move on to my critical review on how this fairy tale plays in today's society, where I'll use a film that can give a comparison and a parallel to the fairy tale. Then we'll move on to my trigger points, which can be perceived as negative or positive trigger points. And last but not least, the quote. And now for today's episode, The Eternal Light. An unstable man slipped out of the local tavern and wandered aimlessly through the fog until he caught sight of a dimly lit old lamp hypnotically pulling him towards the end of the street. When he arrives, he sees the golden rich embers of an angelic woman with silk blonde hair tumbling to her waist. I digress. He must have thought he was hallucinating. Stunned into numbness at the sight of Maggie, his wife come back from the dead, he reaches out and folds into her tender bosom and with unabashed joy, and falls to the ground like a pile of dirty clothes in need of a wash. His eyes closed with a welcomed exhale so pungent it stirs the spirit out of the lamp. I digress. Smelly breath can often wake up even the most unconscious being, let alone spirit. Prologue. It was the night of the Last Supper, and John Haddock had lost his job yet again and started drinking early that day. It had been a habit that had outstayed his welcome. I digressed. Feelings buried alive never die, no matter how much you drink. Ever since dear Maggie died during delivering their youngest of two daughters, things went downhill. He had owned a famous hardware store in Camden Lock in North London, where all the villagers brought from him. Business had been good until that fateful night when he was overloaded with work and left the shop late. As he turned the key, he heard quiet sobs coming from their bedroom. The doctor emerged holding beautiful Liza in his arms, then glanced back and shook his head. I digress. The guilt must have mounted because he wasn't there for Maggie or Liza. Maggie had died after a difficult birth. The whole of unfathomable pain made him double over and cry from grief. Little Dora ran to him, holding her dad's tightly, with uncontrollable tears falling down her face. I digress, hence the need to fill the hole in his heart with drink. It was the early 60s when all the baby boomers flooded society. Emma, Maggie's identical twin, tried to stem the grief by helping out John until he went back to work, but that never happened. It had been 4 years since her death, but the gnawing pain of her passing felt like it was yesterday. I digress. A mourning period that's stuffed with guilt can take longer than usual. Reflection. His guilty feelings had a lot to do with not being present at the birth of Liza and not being there for Maggie to say goodbye. Pearl of wisdom. Poisoning yourself from the awful consequences of guilt, which are preconceived ideas pushed down on us from society, is futile. It never resolves anything except causes you extreme damage. Summary of the plot. The spirit quietly observed John, who was now gently caressing the lamp fast asleep. Her presence felt familiar, and he began to mumble, "Who's there?" He stirred. The spirit asked gently, "Who's Maggie?" A heavy silence filled the air. A cold sweat appeared on his brow. John shrieked, "She's dead. I killed her." The spirit urged softly, "How did you do that?" John nodded off, releasing another repugnant exhale, sweeping the spirit across the street. She wondered, was she in hell? An unmistakable pause, pure and blameless, stood between the spirit and John. Then spirit transformed into Maggie. "My dear John," she said, "there was nothing you could do. It was my time to pass on and for you to be the torchbearer for our wonderful family. We both knew the birth of the second child could put me at risk, but I wanted to bring our dearest Liza into the world." Her voice paused for a moment. "You don't know how overcome with joy I was when I took my final breath, because in doing so, I brought a new soul into this world. It was the proudest moment of my life. I wouldn't change it for anything, my love." John stirred again, calling out, "Maggie, my dearest Maggie, can I see you just once more?" Reflection. The spirit of Maggie spoke to his heart as she blessed John with the tender truth which freed him from the guilt he had carried for so long. Pearl of wisdom. The grace offered to John is the elixir he needed to heal his heart. However, our need to punish ourselves can sometimes override such moments of compassion. You can and you will. The spirit hovered nearby, reassuring him, "John, there was nothing you could do." She continued, "Do you remember a few days before Maggie gave birth, what the spirit asked of you while you prayed in church?" John stiffened. "No, no, no. Why should I be punished for loving my true love?" The spirit pressed on again gently. "Do you remember what was asked?" John nodded and whispered in shame, "Let her go. When Liza is born, let Maggie go, go, go." The echo rang out loud in his ears. Maggie knew too, because the spirit had asked her to sacrifice her life for dear Liza. I digress. Can you imagine how devastating a command that was? "You may not have wanted to let her go, John," the spirit said, "and that's only natural. But you weren't responsible for Maggie's passing." I digress. The weight of guilt truly must have lifted then. Remember, Jesus took all our debt when he died on the cross, including the atonement for past, present, and future sins. The spirit insisted. Your debt has been paid. You are free. John's legs gave way from under him as he fled the voice that chased him with mercy. Reflection. The spiritual truth by Maggie revealed must have cleansed his internal soul with the realization that spirit had asked both of them to make this sacrifice for Liza. Pearls of wisdom. When your karmic life on this planet is completed, there's nothing you can do but accept your fate. We all have different soul contracts we've agreed to before we come here. The sun rose with a soft pink hue dancing beneath the flutter of John's eyelids. "Where am I?" he murmured. The smell of breakfast and the sweet buns lured him from bed. Dora rushed into his arms. "Daddy, Daddy, Aunt Emma's here. Can you smell breakfast?" She giggled. John followed the scent to the kitchen, where the lamp now stood polished, glowing, sacred. Restore it, the spirit had said. Use it as a spiritual artifact to encourage others to pray. How beautiful it is, he whispered. Later that morning, they climbed the steps of the church. Pastor Bacon greeted them with a warmth and grasped John's hand. You like our new lamp, then? He asked John, thrilled, and smiled. Yes, I do. Well, then, here's to her better, here's to her eternal light, blessings and protection. And to a fresh start, John added. Yes, indeed. She'll be here long after us have passed. Back at home, Emma called out, Off you go now, so I can clean up and get dressed for church. John shook his head, confused. What? He couldn't remember what he was about to ask. Breakfast was joyful and the girls looked beautiful. John's heart skipped a beat as he locked eyes with Emma. She's Maggie revisited, he thought. Reflection. This is a wonderful moment for John's, embracing the recognition of the truth birth at the new life of him and the family. Pearls of wisdom, using the lamp as a beacon of hope for all who needs to be blessed. Grace is a wonderful way to honor the memory of Maggie. They stepped outside, turning the corner into the church courtyard when John suddenly stopped. Is something wrong? Emma asked. The old lamp, he gasped. Oh, yes, Emma smiled. The church decided to restore it. As they approached the church courtyard, John paused, his gaze fixed on the old lamp, now gleaming atop its restored post. Emma noticed his hesitation. Is something wrong? She asked. John smiled softly. No, it's just the lamp. It's hesitation. Is something wrong? She asked. John smiled. No, it's just. Emma nodded. The church decided to restore it. They say its light has guided many souls. I digress, including saving her husband's soul too. John reached out, his fingers brushing against the lamp as lamp's warm surface. A sense of peace washed over him. It's beautiful, he whispered. Emma took his hand. Come on, everyone's waiting as they entered the church. The lamp's glow remained steady, a silent testament to love's enduring presence. I digress. Maggie kept her promise that John would not only see Maggie again, but for the rest of his life. Reflection. John received the redemption he so desperately needed and the rekindling of his deceased wife's love, and a fresh new start to his life with his family. Pearls of wisdom. How Maggie's grace allowed John to stop punishing himself through guilt and forgive himself. Wow, what an interesting fairy tale by Magic Circle in the Skies. My critical review on how this fairy tale plays in today's society. The Eternal Lamp is a tale of loss, longing, and the light that never goes out. Beneath its quiet glow lives a man haunted by sorrow, a spirit offering mercy, and the truth that love and real love transcends even death. What happens when guilt and grace collide at the end of the street? We explore how grief, forgiveness, and divine restoration can burn brightly in even our darkest corners. It's deeply tender and poetic, with a gentle blend of grief, redemption, and mystery. There's a strong spiritual presence throughout, and the transformation of spirit turning into Maggie is such a meaningful twist. This is the magical moment when Maggie is able to reach into John's heart space and heal him through tremendous grace and mercy. This demonstrates her burning love for her husband and family will always be eternal. This story reminded me of a family member when I was around 8 years old. My Aunt G was married to the kindest man in the world who loved her dearly, and she was quite dominant to him, though. My Aunt G was married, they had a son who was in the military. Well, one night, the military came to their front door to inform them that their only child had been killed in a car accident while serving in Germany. Their grief and pain were gutting, especially with Aunt G, who was inconsolable. Then a year later, her husband was coming home from a construction job in South End, London, and the Mini, with carrying 3 men traveling on New Year's Eve, collided with a truck and ran underneath it. I think she was beyond all pain that consumed her. When she saw the police at the front door, she couldn't stop screaming. I think she felt incredibly guilty with Len, her husband, because she wasn't always kind to him. But the reality is, people, in both her son and husband's time had come to an end. And maybe Uncle Len went to be with his son. Now, this is a reality, people, and I know it's very difficult pill to swallow. God Bless the Broken Road is a film about Amber's ideal life is shattered when she loses her husband to the war in Afghanistan. 2 years later, she finds herself in a struggle to save her home while providing for her 9-year-old daughter, Bree. When up-and-coming race car driver Cody Jackson rolls into town, Amber and Bree become wrapped up in his pedal to the metal way of life. With her faith hanging in the balance, Amber is forced to decide between the broken road she knows so well or trusting in the new path God has provided. She reads her deceased husband's letter at his gravesite and expresses Amber is loved more than she knows. Only then is she able to put the past behind her. And also what happens in the film is that the partner, he saved one of the people in his platoon or in his combat group. He saved his life. While he was dying, he managed to save this man. And he came to her and personally told her that he did not die in vain, that he saved my life. And this helped her to put closure on this situation. And what happens is that she doesn't blame God as much. She decides to go back to church and resume the church with her daughter. And of course, the race car driver, I think, also is committed to a religious practice, even though he's not as strong as Amber is. But they get together and this new life is paved after she realizes that her husband's, again, life did not die in vain. He saved someone. He sacrificed his life for his comrade. So, and the trigger points now. Well, the trigger points is really going to talk about the guilt and how we punish ourselves about with guilt, and it doesn't resolve anything. Yes, external social pressure can contribute to feelings of guilt. Society often sets expectations and standards that individuals may internalize, leading to feelings of inadequacy or guilt when they don't conform. But the social expectations and the internalized values, when someone has passed, and our expectations of what we should have done, maybe we could have saved them, is not realistic. But we like to think that we have the power to be able to rescue our true loved ones, and sometimes, a lot of times, we can't do that. Anyway, I'd like to just end with two situations, two true stories. One is about a family that I knew. Our family knew their family. And these people are a perfect example of eternal light and eternal love. My goodness, they had 3 daughters, and the mother was faithful and stayed in the marriage with her husband after he was after he committed fraud, his printing company, and he went to prison for 5 years, then came out, and family went back to normal. And then the second time, this when his children were a bit older, he had to go back again because of fraud again, second time. And while he was there, he was in there for 7 years. While he was there, they had a really big outreach Christian program, and he converted to Christianity, or dedicated his life to Christianity. And what was interesting, when he left, he became a minister, and he decided to minister in Jamaica with his wife, left his 3 children in England, and the family was very secure and steady. There was no problem with them. They still loved the father because of the commitment that they had with each other. And there's a very good story, very good example for their children. And I don't think she ever really fell for another man or went with another man. She really loved her husband. Now, in the second story, both my parents had a terrible marriage with each other, but they ended up meeting somebody that they could have a really good, stable relationship with. My mother was married to John, who was a wonderful stepfather to me for 30 odd years and treated her like a queen. And my father, my blood father, who's still alive, 95 years old, even though I haven't seen him for over 45 years, I think. And I spoke to him the other day out of surprise. I've forgiven him, of course. And he's been married to his wife for 45, almost 50 years now. So as much as I may not have felt really great about my father or about his wife, these are 2 wonderful examples of, eternal love, and love that the flame could keep burning for a really long time, from here into eternity, who knows. But that's the end of today's episode. And I'd like to say thank you very much for the people that have listened. And we're going to end with my quote, and that is: healing is a lifelong blessing, lesson, and gift we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Healing is a lifelong lesson, blessing, and gift we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Until next time, goodbye.